welcome to the, I'm getting an echo there, now it's gone. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is Sunday, May 28th, 2017. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, John Iacoletti.
Hello.
Woo. Fresh off from working and then going back to doing work.
Yeah, we're building a house down in Smithville and doing lots of lifting and cutting and...
Well, this is a good breather for you. You can have some water, catch your breath, and then get right back to work.
Exactly.
Don't let it wait. And this program is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state, or if you prefer, the separation of religion and government, from my friend Amanda. And I think that her phrasing might be preferred, but we've got an uphill battle to overcome the phrasing we've used for ages. When I say nonprofit organization, it turns out there were a lot of people that didn't know that. You can go to atheist-community.org to find out more about the ACA. You can find out about the weekly brunch that happens at Cafe Express, the monthly lecture series, and you can donate to the efforts of the ACA, which include this program and the nonprofits, which is airing every other Wednesday, I believe.
First and third.
First and third. And as a reminder from something I said last week, thank you to everybody who participated in the survey that we had about the ACA as a whole and the Atheist Experience in our shows. The feedback is being considered and evaluated to figure out, what changes we should make, if any. The first big change is that in the announcements for the show, I actually should mention more things about us being a nonprofit organization and the events that we have going on.
And we got 3,800 responses or something. Just totally blew away the consultant that we're working with to do the survey, and so I wanted to thank you all for participating in that.
Yeah, the feedback was great, positive and negative. We can work to fix things and improve things. Some of the feedback will be ignored if you just say, "Hey, Matt's a big douche." Well, we already knew that. We didn't have to do any feedback for that. As a reminder, after the show's over, we get together for dinner. We're going to Star of India, 6900 West Anderson Lane, and I imagine it'll be up posted there just before my finger gets all the way. Nope, it didn't. I'm faster than Mark today. So this is a live call-in program where we talk to people about what they believe and why. It often involves discussions, debates, some more heated than others, but the goal is to figure out why people have beliefs that we don't share, why we don't, in fact, share them, and whether or not that's correct, whether or not there's a good reason for belief, whether or not there's a good reason for disbelief. And it's the sort of thing that you don't find very often. Unfortunately, that occasionally means that there are people who call the show who are going to sit on hold for the entire show, and we're not going to get to them. Primarily atheists, as we prioritize theist callers to the show, so that we can have the kind of discussions that the show is founded on. Last little bit of news, I will not be here next week, which would have been, I think, my week off anyway, because I've done the show 4 weeks in a row. I'll be in Toronto, both for the Imagine a Religion 7 conference, where on Sunday afternoon I'll be performing a little magic and mind reading. And then Monday, immediately after INR 7, Lawrence Krauss and I will be doing an event. And you can go to my Facebook page. You can go to Pangburn Philosophy. You can go to mattdillahunty.com, actually, which is up and running now, and you can find out about that and other events. But we're not here just to promote my stuff. We're here to take some calls.
Yep.
So I don't have any other announcements right now, but if you go to atheist-community.org, you can find a calendar there that will show you what the ACA's got going on in the upcoming future. All right. Now, David was kind enough to help us test the phones to make sure everything was working before we went live. David in Montreal, thanks for waiting.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure.
This is my first time calling. It's my first time actually listening to the show, so I've only heard your introduction. That's all I know of you, but it sounds really good. I have a similar mission, a sort of Socratic mission to pursue the truth, follow the truth wherever it goes. That sounds kind of like what you're doing, so I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question for us? Or
yeah. Okay. I don't know how this works. Am I supposed to jump right in with my question?
Yeah, by all means, go for it. And,
okay.
and by the way, let me do this because I want to make sure this is clear. I'll say this maybe once or twice a year. On occasion, we will interrupt. That is not to be rude, and sometimes there are problems with the phones where you can't hear and you can't carry on a conversation. But one of the other things is sometimes we'll be engaged with somebody, and if they have a 5-premise argument that they want to get through, and we disagree with the first one, if we let them get all the way to the end, we don't get anywhere because we end up having to backtrack. But I'm happy to to let you take off, and we'll see where we go.
Sure, mine is incredibly simple.
Okay.
It's been on my mind a lot recently because I belong to a skeptical group here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and we meet once a month and we talk about skepticism and rationality and stuff like that. But the issue that I want to confront you with is the principle of sufficient reason. So basically, it boils down in a nutshell, in layman's terms, that everything in the natural order has a perfectly reasonable explanation. There's nothing that's exempt, for example, from the laws of nature. There's nothing that gets a free pass. There's no magic fairy dust, okay, if you will. So I think that the atheist, the only honest and rational and self-consistent and self-respecting atheist, has to be a hard determinist where there is no free will, there is no morality, and there is no love, really. It's just the mechanical working out of a great, well-oiled machine. That's my proposition to you, and I'd like to hear your response.
How did you get to that from principle of sufficient reason to atheist?
Because everything has, in principle, an explanation. And if you're an atheist, you don't believe in the supernatural, presumably.
Okay, so actually that's not true, and you're mostly right. Atheists don't believe in a God. It's entirely possible that somebody could be an atheist and believe in the supernatural, but you are correct that we do not believe in the supernatural because there isn't sufficient warrant for belief in that. But what I don't, let's just go with, let's not even put a label on it. I don't believe in a God and I don't believe in the supernatural. What does that have to do with whether or not I accept that love is an observed part of reality, or that where your other things were a hard determinist? If the evidence is
no free will,
in opposition to hard determinism, I don't know why I'd have to accept that. But also when you went to free will and morality, I think in order to talk about those, we'd have to do some definitions, because depending on what kind of free will you're talking about, I don't believe in it.
Okay, I'd like to keep it really, really simple.
Me too.
And just acknowledge the fact that if there is nothing beyond the natural, nothing above the natural, and super just means above in Latin. So if there is no supernatural, if there's nothing above the natural, then everything is subject to natural cause and effect. And in principle, if we had the tools and if we had access to the subtle causes and effects, in principle, there's nothing that escapes the scientist's inquiry. You understand?
No, I definitely understand. And if you were to perhaps, it may be the case that if you were to have absolute knowledge of the position and spin of every particle in the universe, you could make perfect predictions. We don't know that to be the case. But the bigger issue here is that if everything has an explanation for why it is the way it is, that doesn't tell us anything at all about whether or not it necessarily needs to be a supernatural explanation. It could just be, for example, love is the label that we put on a complex variety of human emotions, experiences. We can identify things. It's not like a thing that exists unto itself. Matter of fact, it's a collection of different emotive behaviors and actions. We recognize that somebody does this and we label it love. It's not like love exists as some, independent thing. But let's say we had no explanation or understanding of this. To say that it must have a supernatural explanation, I don't know what the justification is for that.
No, I didn't say that. In fact,
if your statement is that if you reject the supernatural, you can have no explanation for these things, then you are in fact saying the explanation.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, if I could clarify, what I'm saying is that if it is the case that everything has, there's a good reason for everything, that everything has a sufficient reason or a sufficient cause. If it is the case, and I believe that it is, so it's a two-part conditional, and if there's no supernatural, then we must conclude that hard determinism is true, and that there is the illusion of free will, perhaps, and the illusion of love and the illusion of morality, but in fact, it's just a great, well-oiled machine. Now,
hang on, because you're starting with two ifs, and I don't know that you're starting with two ifs, and you're reaching conclusions that I don't think are truly derived from those two ifs, and we haven't even established if those two ifs are the case.
Okay, well, if we assume the opposite, let's say that there's something that happens in this universe that doesn't have a cause. Are you comfortable with that? I'm not.
Okay, well, first of all, it doesn't matter whether or not we're comfortable with something.
But do things just happen, or is there a reason?
I don't know how this is relevant. So let me get back to this.
Because I'm claiming that everything has a sufficient cause.
Sure.
It's a principle.
Okay, the idea that something has a sufficient cause is fine, but that doesn't mean you have. That doesn't mean that you know what the sufficient cause is or anything about it. Okay.
Right.
So
but there are two
this
possibilities.
this is utterly.
There are two possibilities. Either it's
David.
natural. Either it's completely natural, or it's not. Right.
Either it's completely natural or it's not. Yes.
Right.
But
right. So if it is completely natural, then we can, with certainty, with logical 100% certainty, we can say that hard determinism is the state of affairs.
No, you can't, because hard determinism isn't necessarily the case, and soft determinism allows for quantum indeterminacy and stuff, which still doesn't violate the natural law. But saying
if it doesn't violate natural law, then it's hard determined. It's 100% determined.
What about quantum effects, like you just mentioned? What about
those are still natural.
They're still natural. They're subject to natural law.
But they're not deterministic.
They are deterministic. It's just our limited capabilities to measure and to
How do you know
intervene.
That? How do you know that?
Because I studied quantum physics, and we use statistical methods precisely because we can't know two or more qualities and attributes of these quantum.
Sure, but here's the thing. What I'm talking about is, yes, the explanation for any X is natural or it's not. Those are the only two options. Okay?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that if the explanation for X is unknown, that doesn't mean that it's supernatural or not natural, however you want to say it. And also,
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, what I'd like the atheist to do is to honestly consider that if there is no supernatural, then.
But that's not the atheist position. The atheist position is not there is no supernatural. My position as a skeptic is that I do not believe that there's anything supernatural because there has not been presented sufficient evidence to warrant that belief. It's not a claim that the supernatural doesn't exist. It's that we don't yet have evidentiary warrant to accept that it does.
I have evidence. I could provide you with evidence.
Oh,
quickly.
good.
Yeah.
Provide the evidence for the supernatural. And why on earth would you call us instead of going after your Nobel Prize or your Templeton Prize?
The evidence is how nervous atheists get when I talk about determinism, because no one wants to.
Okay, David.
No one wants
David.
to not free, and that love is just a well-oiled machine, right?
David. How nervous atheist gets is utterly irrelevant. It's not an evidence for the supernatural. And first of all,
could I complete my thought?
No, I'm going to complete mine first. You said that you could provide evidence for the supernatural, and you started off with something that is so boneheadedly irrelevant that it's incredibly frustrating. The idea that because a group of people who don't accept or reject, for example, the supernatural might get nervous when you bring up this doesn't mean that it's evidence for it.
Okay, let me restart.
I think you're confusing nervousness with rejecting your premises.
Let me put it another way to you, which would be less offensive, maybe.
It's not about offense.
We're not offended. I'm not offended.
Okay.
Make a damn argument and provide some evidence.
The damn argument I'll make is that if everything is caused by natural causes and there is no supernatural, then that means in principle that everything is 100% determined. You accept that much?
No, I accept that it's possible that may be the case, but not that it's demonstrable that it is the case.
I'm not convinced that there are things in the natural world that are random and not predictable.
Well, predictability depends on our level of knowledge, right?
I agree.
Methods are only a tool because of ignorance.
I agree.
That's why I say, in principle, we don't have the capability of even predicting weather in the future, and to a great extent. It's too complicated.
We have the ability to roughly predict weather. We can make predictions that are consistent with the information we have.
We can use generalizations and statistical approaches.
I agree. Please explain what the hell that has to do with your statement.
We know that there is the supernatural Because if there is no supernatural, then everything is natural. And that cannot be the case, because if
Okay.
it is the case...
David, write down what you just said. We know that there's supernatural, because if there's not, then everything is natural.
Yep.
Are you just going to spout irrelevant tautologies, or are you going to get to the actual evidence? You know what?
Well, you cut me off
hey,
before I could...
David, we know that everything's natural, because if it wasn't, then the supernatural would be supernatural.
The other thing, if I could try one more thing with you before I go,
Okay.
if it's possible, it would be the uncaused first cause. We know with certainty that there is an uncaused first cause.
No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. David, no, we don't. We don't know that. We don't know that. First of all, I reject the notion that we know anything to an absolute certainty, so you're already engaged in some sloppiness there. But when you start talking about the second law of thermodynamics, it doesn't apply at the origin of the universe.
The laws of nature don't apply within the universe?
Within, yes, but we're talking about the origins of the universe. You're talking about an uncaused first cause. Well, you understand the laws of thermodynamics apply to closed systems, right?
Yeah, and the universe is a closed system.
Yeah, but the origin of the universe is outside of the closed system, right?
That's my God.
Okay, please tell me something about your God other than that it is a sufficient explanation for the origin of the universe.
He's self-existent.
How do you know that?
He has to be.
Okay, I'm not interested in these have to be's.
No.
I want to know how you know what you know about your God.
Because it's deduction, pure deduction. It's reason. Because if we posit the opposite, and say there's no first cause that's uncaused, then we have an infinite regressive cause and effect. And that cannot be. It's untenable.
You don't know that.
I do know that, because it's only a finite amount of time that would accomplish the heat death, and we haven't.
No. Your finite time and heat death apply to the local presentation of the universe. They don't apply. Time may not apply outside of the universe at all. Isn't your God timeless?
Yes.
So don't be talking to me about the properties of your God and saying that it must necessarily be a first cause because there hasn't been enough time in the local presentation of the universe. You're ignoring other potential hypotheses where the cosmos is in fact eternal.
Well, either there's an infinite chain of cause and effect,
okay,
or not, and if not, then there's a first uncaused cause. And
since we don't know which of those two is correct.
Well, no, we do know, because if we posit an infinite chain of cause and effect, that means that you and I literally cannot be here right now.
No, because
we are here.
So causality is necessarily temporal, correct?
Correct.
And time is a property.
Time begins with the universe.
Okay. So you can't talk about causality absent time, correct?
Well, we can talk about God causing the universe, yes. He's the first cause.
So you just said that causality was necessarily temporal, and if there's no time prior to the universe, under your model, then your God can't cause anything.
In the natural order. But God is the first cause.
How do you know?
Because if we posit the opposite and say there is no first cause, then that means infinite regress.
Yeah, I know, David, the fact that you are unwilling to accept something as a possibility doesn't mean that it's not the case. The correct position here is that we have no explanation for the origins of the universe. We're still working on it. But the theists want to pretend through philosophical masturbation that they have cracked the case.
But may I ask you a personal question? Do you believe that the universe has a beginning or no?
So it depends on what we mean by universe. The normal presentation of the universe, we can't investigate, the very earliest moments of it. But do I think that the cosmos may in fact be eternal? That seems to be a plausible explanation supported by Alan Guth and others that the universe, and in this context the cosmos, which may be a multiverse or anything else, may in fact be eternal. But the thing is, we cannot investigate that.
We can use reason. We can apply reason and deduction, no?
But reason is only applicable if you have something to actually point it to.
Base it on.
So what are the other universes in the multiverse like?
We don't know, but we do know that cause and effect governs everything.
Do we?
The material universe.
So if cause and effect is temporal and time is contained within our local presentation of the universe, you're asserting that other potential universes also have cause and effect.
Of course, because
How do you
we are
even
here
know
now.
that they have time?
Well, if they don't have time, that doesn't bother me.
Okay, I don't care if it bothers
okay
you.
with
You
that.
keep coming back to this. Your proof of this
It's
is
not
that
a
your proof of the one thing is because atheists are bothered by it. Your proof of another thing is that you're not comfortable with it. I don't care if
No.
you're comfortable with it. I care about what is actually true and reasonable to believe.
Right, but listen, the sum total of all the multiverses and all the strings and all the bouncing universes and, everything that you can imagine, every wacky theory that any speculative philosophical scientist has come up with, you can clump them all into what I call the universe. Maybe you call it the cosmos, I don't know, but I call it the universe.
Yeah,
I put all my universes into one universe, but to me, uni means one, so I just call it the universe.
yeah, that's
right?
the way this started until we actually learned a bit more and learned a bit more about possibilities. So you
call it the cosmos
have a
picture,
God,
right?
you have a God that is your first cause. What do you know about this God?
Yeah. I know that he's perfect he's infinite in every perfection, that it's better to have than to not have.
How do you know that?
I know that. I know that because of the principle that an effect cannot be greater than its cause. Right? And so when we observe the
Really?
perfections in this
So when
in
I
this
light
world,
a fuse with a match, it can't. All right, I'm not even going to go down that particular road. I want to know
you
what.
shouldn't, because you're going to look so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
An effect can't be
Yeah.
greater than the cause. So, for example, when I light a match and put it to a bomb, we're not going to get an effect that you could look at it, and I understand where you're going. You could look at it as if the causal effect, or the proximate cause, the necessary and sufficient cause of lighting the match, produces something that is more significant. Now, it doesn't in any way violate the laws of nature, because the components of that bomb are what actually are causing the explosion. However, you're saying that God has to be perfect in every possible way. Is this an agent?
He's a person. He has personality. Yeah.
How do you know that?
Because I'm a person, and an effect cannot be greater than its cause. I know that God loves.
So basically, you're saying it's impossible for you to exist unless there was a God that nature
That's right.
that nature could not, through pure natural processes and chemicals, result in biological thinking agents.
No, if God blinked once, we would disappear.
Okay.
He's watching, and he's.
Guess how
sustaining
many times I'm going to blink. See,
you can blink as much as you want. You're not the necessary being. You're not the creator and sustainer.
yeah, but I am the
So you
person
can
who
blink all
determines
you want.
whether or not we're going to keep listening to unfounded assertions. So
No, but you're talking about the attributes of God, and the ancient Greeks came up with a lot of the attributes of God just using pure reason.
yeah, they did come up with
So this is not
the attributes of
this
God.
is not.
I want to
this
know
is
whether or
my
not
little-
I want to know whether or not the attributes are accurate. Whether or not there's actually, what does God want?
God wants everything that's good.
And how do you know that? Is that just
Happiness.
definitional as well?
Well, it all has to do with goodness, right? Like the things
What
that
is
you
goodness?
crave.
What is goodness?
Whatever it's better to have than to not have. Life,
Yeah,
love, justice,
David, I'm done.
beauty,
David,
health.
I'm done with your tautology parade.
Well, you're just asking me. I'm telling you. I don't know if you want mathematical proofs or what do you want, but
I'd like a definition that
you'll
isn't just a
admit-
tautology. The good things are those good things. They're not the bad things.
I can talk about the fact that God is not material because the material things are subject to change. They're composed of parts. All of this is well established over the past millennia.
It's well established
Even
in
by-
theological circles that they're desperate to find something, but I want to know what actually is. So you think that there's a God who is a person and he wants goodness.
And he's perfect.
Yeah, he needs nothing, right? But what he created us gratuitously out of love, and he wants us to be with him and to be happy.
How do you know that?
How do you get from uncaused first cause to all of that stuff?
Well, I'm not just sitting in my living room in my armchair doing philosophy. I belong to the Roman Catholic Church, and I have a lot of revealed truths.
How were they revealed?
They're revealed by God through sacred tradition and sacred scripture.
What makes them sacred? How do you know that? How do you know that the traditions in Scripture that you're saying are sacred are the right ones?
I have faith.
Okay, I'm not interested in positions that are based on faith, because faith is not.
Well, then that's why I was talking. That's why I was talking about philosophy.
Because faith is not a pathway to truth. Not a.
But I don't have faith in. I don't have faith in God the Father. I have faith in the Trinity. I have faith in the Incarnation. I have faith in infallibility.
I don't give a rat's ass if you have faith in your lucky rabbit's foot. I care about what's actually true and demonstrable. And if your position is that you believe these things based on faith, now we've entered a whole new realm.
The mysteries of faith that are revealed and that can't be known by the natural light of reason, I accept on faith, obviously.
Yeah,
but
that is absolute, I'm sorry, but that is absolute garbage. Every time I talk with Catholics in particular, the word mystery just keeps popping up. The mysteries
Well, you're comfortable with mysteries?
No, I'm not comfortable with mysteries. That's the point. That's the point. That's the point of that is the point of going out and finding. Are you going to just keep talking to talk over me?
No, I was talking about the quantum thing. You were very comfortable with the mystery of the quantum world.
No, I'm not. God, are you able to understand anything that I'm actually saying? I'm saying that I'm not comfortable with not knowing, but I'm not so uncomfortable with not knowing that I'm going to make shit up to soothe myself, which is what religions do.
Well, if we could talk about the quantum thing for just a little bit.
No,
we
can't.
That we can agree.
No, we can't.
That either
it's
perfect.
David, I'm not a quantum physicist. I don't give a rat's ass, but I know some quantum physicists who disagree with you. Call them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different philosophical interpretations.
Yeah, and I want to know what's actually reasonable to believe, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
Then why would you take anything on faith? Faith is not a reliable path to understanding.
I trust the witnesses of Jesus Christ, and I've done a lot of research into it.
Why? Okay, first of all, you have no access to any of the witnesses. None.
What are you talking about? I have a few Catholic friends, not many.
What witness to Jesus Christ do you have access to?
I was confirmed in the Catholic Church in 2009, and the bishop that laid his hands on me, there's a paper trail going all the way back to Jesus Christ, the laying on of hands. From one...
Hey, you know what? I did a card trick the other day, and there's a paper trail of that card trick going back to Merlin. Does that mean Merlin was a wizard? I'm asking you, what access do you have? See, you know how you talked about atheists getting nervous when you talk about it? Why is it every time I ask you a question, you start fucking laughing? I'm asking you a serious. I'm asking you a serious question, and you're not even attempting. You said you have faith because of your access to the witnesses to Jesus Christ, and I'm asking you, who are those witnesses? How many times do I have to ask this?
The saints.
What saints, and how do you? Okay, how are they witnesses to Jesus Christ?
You go to the library, you pick up a book, you read what they said and what they lived and how they lived and how they died.
Okay, which one of them was a witness to Jesus Christ?
You want me to name the apostles and the successors to the apostles?
I would like you to, first of all, start with Jesus and name who the witness is. Name one.
He had apostles. James, John, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew.
Now, what do you have from them that you can confirm comes from them and is in fact accurate?
The writings.
Okay, so first of all, sir, writings and oral tradition, fine. We have no idea who wrote the Gospels. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we go into the other writings where it comes from Paul and whatever, Paul never met Jesus as a living being, did he?
Yeah, he did, on the road to Damascus.
That's not Jesus as a living being, that's an apparition.
You think it wasn't Jesus?
Of course I think it wasn't Jesus.
I guess
I don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead and appeared to somebody, but you do.
Yeah, I do, based on the testimony of all the witnesses. Yeah.
No, there were no witnesses to this. Paul meets this apparition on the road to Damascus, and the people accompanying him either don't see anything or can't attest to anything. There aren't witnesses for this, and you have no witnesses that you can investigate. What you have is a collection of stories that are unsourced, that keep pointing to witnesses that you don't have any ability to investigate. If someone came to you right now and said, my uncle met Jesus or met Elvis when Elvis rose from the dead, would you believe him?
No.
Okay. Why do you have a different standard for that than you do for what you're reading when this is somebody who you could in fact speak to and evaluate them personally face to face as to how reliable they are rather than an anonymous source?
Because of the way they live their lives and the way they're willing to die.
See, this is the thing. You don't know how they live their lives or how they were willing to die. Do you think people would be willing to die for something that wasn't in fact true?
Yes.
Yeah, they would. So that becomes an irrelevant factor. So how do we determine with any reliability that the stories you are putting your faith in are in fact true? I'm not saying, David, I'm not saying how do we determine whether or not those people believed it? I'm talking about whether or not it was actually true.
Yeah, there's a whole host of different kinds of evidence that come together in my mind to make it reasonable to accept the testimony of the witnesses over the 2,000 years.
Yes, thanks for telling me again for telling me what you believe, which we established 20 minutes ago, and avoiding the why at all costs.
Well, I just told you that there are a whole bunch of reasons why I believe the testimony of the witnesses. There are literally libraries full of writings by the Christian saints. If you haven't looked into it, maybe you should if you're curious, but it's very powerful and it's very convincing.
You do realize that I was a Christian for more than 25 years and that this is in fact my life's work. I don't know you. Yeah, I'm talking about why we should believe that the claims are true, not how they live their lives. Because would you acknowledge that there are people in other religions that you do not believe are true, who have lived wonderful lives and credit their religion with it? Okay, so now we have
like I said,
how do we tell? Holy crap! How do we tell the difference between those two people? Person A from your religion and person B from some other religion. How do you tell the difference?
Well, the first and most important element is: are they talking about my God, that first cause?
Okay, we're done. God? We're done. Are they talking about my God? Talk about, I'm going to go with the one I believe in. This is the thing. If you ask John, why do you believe the Earth orbits the sun?
I don't know.
You don't know. That's an acceptable answer. Another answer, it would be to actually provide the evidence for it, the direct observations, how we got it wrong before, how we correct it in the past. Neither of us are scientists. Neither of us are going to be. Yeah, we're not going to be able to give a good answer on that. But this isn't let's orbit the Earth or let's orbit the Sun club. Fuck, I'm going to get it all wrong. The thing is, if this is something that you've called in to say that you believe, I'm fine with you saying you believe based on faith. I'm fine with that as, in fact, your answer. I'm going to challenge it because I don't find faith to be a reliable path to truth. There's nothing that you couldn't accept on faith. And when you say, I've read the stories of the apostles and the lives they lived, okay, but you have no idea how to determine the accuracy of those stories. And even if they lived wonderful lives, you just acknowledged that people live lives and credit their religion for good lives, even with religions that you don't think are true. There's this parade of, there must be a first cause, and therefore, which may or may not be true. But if it is, and this is why you atheists get so nervous, is because you recognize that as soon as that your model has hard determinism and no free will and no way to hold people responsible and no morality and no love, and that's just garbage. Chris Johnson was just here last week. He's got a book and a film called A Better Life, where 100 atheists speak out on joy and meaning in a life without God. The film doesn't have 100 in it, but it's culminated from those interviews. This idea that you can't have morality is something that we've addressed over and over again. There's many different models of morality. But I will say, and this isn't just a dig at him because he's a Catholic, religions raise objections to morality that they can never solve. And meanwhile, if you're going to call in to pretend that atheists have no way of reaching a moral grounding on purely secular terms, then maybe you should go over to Netflix and watch the documentary that I just watched this weekend called The Keepers, which demonstrate that the Catholic Church is a criminal organization that needs to be bankrupted at the first opportunity, and every Catholic church needs to be turned into a home for the impoverished and for children who have been abused by the people that they shuffled around and hid from police. Now, that doesn't tell my little spiel there, as accurate as it is and as applause-worthy as it was, doesn't tell you whether or not there's a God. But neither did anything that David said. Oh, well, there must be a first cause. But you know nothing. Even if you're right that there must be a first cause, you can't tell me anything about it. You have no ability to investigate it. What can you tell me about other universes? We are blocked currently and perhaps eternally from investigating beyond our universe. For most of the existence of human beings, we were blocked from investigating very much outside of the planet that we're sitting on. We've gradually increased our ability to explore, and we have better understandings, but we also don't have an explanation for origins. And the nice thing about science is it doesn't get to pretend that it does have an explanation. There's nothing within the realm of scientific inquiry that says, you know what? We aren't able to come up with a naturalistic explanation, and we've been at this for, a good 150 years or so, so screw it. There must be a first cause. It needs to be a personal God who's timeless, who can act outside of time, and we're going to point to the second law of thermodynamics, even in places where it doesn't apply, because we're so desperate to bolster the ideas that we believe that we're not following the evidence towards a conclusion. We are desperately trying to get all of the little factors to point to what we already believe. That's not what science does, which is why there's no Nobel Prize for demonstrating God, which is why somebody's going to call into the Atheist Experience with their personal take on what they think they can derive from quantum physics, quantum mechanics, rather than going out and demonstrating through proper channels that they have scientifically demonstrated that a God exists. I'm fine with having philosophical arguments. I'm even fine with having some scientific arguments. I try not to go too far afield of my areas of expertise, in part because, and this is why I wanted to get to specifics about the God this person believed in, if you drill down and get specifics about those gods, they are almost always in conflict with the observations that we see, the observations that would be sensible. Oh, what does your God want? He wants what is good. Okay, what's that? Is good just what you think it is? What if you and I disagree on what is good? Oh, well, God's always right. Okay, you can say that, but saying it don't make it so.
Well, and where he was going with that around the time you hung up was he went back to the uncaused first cause, and he said, but those other religions, because you were saying the other religions.
Is anyone listening to me, or am I on here? This is Patrick Stampy. I'm trying to get through.
Oh, hey, Patrick.
Yeah,
I've been waiting. I've been trying to be patient. I was muted. I had it muted the whole time for that entire call. Another atheist debating another Christian. That's too easy for you, man.
Another atheist debating another Christian? I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, a Christian is an easy smackdown for an atheist. Talking snakes, woman made of a man's rib. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay,
here.
Patrick, we hadn't even addressed your welcome to the show. I just accidentally took you off hold as John was finishing his thoughts. For those who aren't aware, Patrick is the person who emailed today to ask us to call him if we had the balls to actually have a real debate about God. And,
exactly.
Yeah, except that debates aren't about balls, Patrick. They're about evidence and argument.
I know. It was a Stephen Colbert reference. I mean, it's not that serious.
Okay, so I went ahead because you couldn't find the phone number for the show, which, by the way, for everybody listening, if you go to atheist-experience.com, there's a section there that says, how do I call the show? And it has the number, which, by the way, if you'd ever seen a clip of the show, the number appears right here. It's up there, I don't know why, how is it that you couldn't find the number?
Your web page is designed pretty pitiful as to whoever designed it needs to work.
I understand that, Patrick. Here's the thing. If you couldn't find the phone number for the show, how is it that you found the email address, and how is it that you have any understanding of a God?
Well, I got that from the web page. I didn't see that. I read just about the whole web page. I didn't see the number. I'm sorry if I overlooked it, but that's not what this debate is about at any rate.
Okay, what's this debate about? What is it that you called in?
This debate is about atheists and God and that sort of thing, I thought.
Well, you're the one who emailed us to basically accuse us of cowardice for not, engaging you. So what is it that you called in to defend?
Well, what I believe is I'm an agnostic deist, or more like a pantheist, so
Want to throw another one in there too, just for good measure?
Yeah. But seriously, though,
Patrick, I'm having a hard time. Patrick, I'm having a hard time taking
Yes,
you
sir.
having a hard time taking you seriously at all. From both your first message to your snarky responses, what is it that you believe and wanted to actually debate about?
well, my concept of God is that God is the universe and everything in it. We are all the parts, organs, cells, that kind of thing.
Why call
And
that?
this
Why call that God?
multiverse is, what's that?
Why would you call the universe God? It's already got a label.
That's a pantheistic view. If you know anything about pantheism,
I know things about pantheism, panentheism, deism. What I'm wondering, can you just tell me what the hell it is that you believe and why, so that we might be able to have this discussion?
Well, I believe God is beyond our scope. How can I define being beyond definition?
So you believe in
scope?
something that you cannot define.
Exactly.
Bye.
Why?
No, I said goodbye.
No, but I'm wondering, why do you believe in something that you can't understand?
I apologize. There's no way I could possibly take Patrick seriously. From his initial email that wrote in to, call me and debate me if you have the balls to have a real discussion about God, to I've wiped the floor with so many atheists and they keep telling me to call you and set them straight. By the way, to my atheist friends around the world, if you engage with somebody who is this confused, don't recommend them to call the show. I believe in something, but it's beyond our ability to define.
And why does it take balls to listen to his definition of God as being the universe? I don't get it.
Yeah. Hey, God is this bottle of Coke Zero, which they should be paying for me now as often as Coke Zero. Coke, get off your ass and start sponsoring the show, because we do this all the time. But there's a couple of things that end up happening. First of all, deism, I'm sorry to my deistic friends, is absurd, because the true deistic thing is this idea that there's a God who started off, but he doesn't intervene in reality at all. And so you're basically claiming that you've detected the undetectable. Patrick is going a step further and claim that he's accepting the undefinable. You can't accept something until it has been defined, at least even loosely. Oh, God is the universe. Okay, I agree there's a universe. I just don't agree why you would call it God. To me, when people do that, what they're doing is, our culture has this God thing that people accept, and I'm terrified of not actually acknowledging that there's no good reason to believe it. So I'm going to find some use for this label.
Right.
Oh, wait, what if God is all of our collective consciousnesses interacting, and that could be God. Could be, but now you're far afield of any God of classical theism, or far afield of anything that we could actually investigate. Because if you can't define it, we can't even get started, which is why you're no longer on the show.
I see a lot of that in kind of liberal religion anyway, is that they're rational people. They want to find something that they can call God that they're willing to accept and slap the label God on it. And yeah, that's always been my response, is why call it God?
So I'm in a bit of a dilemma here, because we've got a couple other theists on the line, and both of them want to talk morality, but I think Joe's been on hold the longest. So Joe in Manassas, thanks for waiting. You're on with Matt and John.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Matt. How you doing? I'm a fan of your show. I've listened to it for a little while, and I've heard some of your debates. I don't know. I kind of disagree a little bit with your view. I mean, I like your view on morality. I think it's sensible and pragmatic, but I can't see any reason for an objective morality in a naturalistic world.
Well, all right. So for clarity, before I go down the road, are you talking about objective morality or an absolute morality?
I guess, how would you define both of them?
Well, objective is contrasted with subjective. So if it's objective, it means that this is the case independent of anybody's personal opinion. Absolute means that this is the case in all circumstances.
Okay, so which one would you claim? Would you claim there's an absolute or an objective?
Subjective.
So outside of any of our thoughts,
Outside of our opinions, so now there's a subjective foundation at the basis of it, which I've acknowledged before, which is well-being. Okay, but would you agree with me that we exist in a physical universe that has physical rules that dictate the consequences of our actions?
yes.
And would you agree with me that those consequences of our actions determine our well-being?
Yes.
Okay, so now we've just established that there are non-subjective facts about reality that determine whether or not something is contributing to or detracting from our well-being.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, that's
I agree with that
objective.
point.
That's objective morality.
Okay, my question is, I'm going to play kind of devil's advocate to your position, okay?
Oh, do God's
Well-
advocate, because I'm so much more fun on the devil's side.
Okay, whatever. Now, what if I don't care about other people's well-being? Is that objectively wrong? Or what if I only care about my own human flourishing?
So yes, I
that be wrong?
could actually argue that that is objectively wrong, because unless you live alone on a planet interacting with absolutely nobody else, your well-being is intrinsically tied to the well-being of those around you.
Okay, and you would say human, like the Sam Harris position, human flourishing, what is the basis for human flourishing being good, but all other, wouldn't a more reasonable position or be all sentient creatures' well-being?
So Sam has gone down the road of talking about sentient creatures. I have no problem with that, except that all we're talking about is the well-being of, let's say, thinking creatures. Or I'm fine with the idea that morality is fundamentally about those who actually participate, that we hold any thinking being morally responsible in proportion to its ability to understand. So, for example, you've got a 2-year-old, doesn't understand that much. You're not going to hold it to the same moral standard that you would hold, your twin brother, right?
Okay.
So there's this idea that you are morally responsible in proportion to your moral comprehension, your understanding of it. Okay. Similarly, we can expand that out to other thinking creatures beyond human beings to talk about what their moral responsibility is. If a shark tries to eat me, I don't think it's being immoral because I don't have any reason to think that it has an understanding of morality, right?
Okay, now what about you eating a cow?
So there's a difference between moral virtue and moral responsibility. So it may be morally virtuous for me to not eat any other animal, but I don't agree that it's a moral responsibility because I also think that there needs to be an equitable arrangement between these. So like the shark isn't immoral for trying to eat me, and I don't think that I'm immoral for trying to eat a shark.
Well, I feel like I could turn that around and say, well, I don't think it's immoral from someone to steal from me, but I can still, if I don't mind stealing from them, because they can steal from me.
Yeah, except that's a little bit short-sighted, don't you think? Because your views and your impact on what morality are affect everybody else, right? And so it determines it determines what kind of society we're going to have. And so the thing that I encourage people to think of is, what would the world be like if everybody took the action that I'm about to take? And so you have to go into this with the idea that if it's okay for you to say this, it's okay for everybody to say this, and if everybody says this, society devolves and you are in fact worse off, as is everybody else.
Well, I'm just playing devil's advocate to your position. I think your position's sensible in the world we live in, but
I don't live in any other world, so that's the only world I care about.
Okay, the world we all live in.
Yep.
That's how I live my.
Okay, there's somebody else who wants to talk about morality, Joe. I'm going to see if they had something slightly different, and maybe let John chime in, as I'm not the ultimate arbiter of morality either.
Yeah, but you're the one who's done a lot of videos on the subject. So.
Yeah, but I might in fact be wrong. It's one of those things where the objections launched by religious people are, oh, well, without some ultimate authority, how can you solve this? Well, that's not solved by religion, because first of all, I have to accept your authority. And if your authority is your holy book or what you think your God says, what if I don't agree with that? So the problem is never solved. And so just recognizing that we need to first start with the thing that we agree on. Now, there are probably people who aren't going to care about human well-being. And I would say that they've divorced themselves from reasonable discussions about morality if we define morality as well-being. The only objections to this, by the way, which are launched all over the place, including by people who are friends of mine who disagreed with me, who disagreed with Sam Harris, is why should we care, but why should well-being be the foundation for what we call morality? And my position is really simple. I'm using it that way because I think that that's what most people are actually talking about when they talk about morality. If in fact that's not what people talk about when they talk about morality, I'm still right with respect to well-being. And if morality means something other than well-being, we got to have a whole separate conversation about what you mean by this.
Yeah.
You know?
If it's just whatever God says, then that's a completely different discussion.
Yep. Or you know, if there was somebody who emailed recently to say that they disagreed with this notion of well-being, and that their view of morality was about desires. The problem is that when you break that down, when you start going through desires, first of all, I have no access to somebody's desires. I can't judge their desires. I judge their actions. And the motivation for an action, you could have good actions that are motivated by bad desires and vice versa. So, I mean, this thing breaks down. And so when you get down to the root of what we're talking about in his desire model, and my apologies for not having him on to defend it himself, we're still talking about well-being. I recently debated on secular moral systems as opposed to Christianity, and which one was superior. And the view is really simple. Even if you think that morality is whatever God wants, the only way that you can encourage somebody else to care what God wants is by framing it in terms of their well-being. It is in your best interest to care about what God wants, because if you don't do this, you'll go to hell. If you do this, you'll go to heaven, or whatever, you know, system this thing comes out to. At the end of the day, even the people who are saying morality is about what God wants from you, you still have to drill down to this idea of, why should I care what God wants? I don't care what your Uncle, you know, Beavis wants from me, and he may be real. So you have to show how caring about what God wants is in my best interest. And when you get other people, now we're talking about well-being again, which is why, I will talk to Sam Harris about this at some point, because we're in agreement on this, whether we disagree on other things. I think that when he wrote The Moral Landscape and framed it in terms of well-being, as many people as objected for various reasons, I think that it's true that well-being is what we in fact care about when we're generally talking about morality and ethics and, you know, what kind of world do we live in. And I will continue to seek examples that show that that's not the case, or somebody who's got a better model. But at the end of the day, if I'm still talking about well-being, and if you agree with me about well-being and just say that that's not morality, okay, please explain to me what your view of morality is and why I should care. And by the way, now we're talking about my well-being again. Darryl in Jacksonville, thanks for waiting. You had questions about morality. I don't know if we've already touched on them.
Yes, sir. I had a few questions. First, I had a line of questions. First off, I wanted to say all praises to the Most High.
Thank you.
And all being fair, I would like to let you know that I'm what you would call a pre-Constantine Christian. So
Okay.
I just want to be fair to y'all. Okay. Sir, can you give a dissertation on how being an atheist is right?
Dissertation.
Okay, so how being an atheist is right. I'm not gonna pester you with a bunch of questions. I'm just gonna see if I can give you an answer that's fine. Atheism is the position of not accepting that a God exists. And
Sir. Can you give me? Let me ask the question again. I don't think you heard it.
I heard it.
Can you give a dissertation on how being an atheist is right?
He's getting to that.
I'm getting. First of all, I wanted to define atheism as the position of not accepting that a God exists. And if in fact you are unconvinced that a God exists, then being an atheist is right.
Okay, is that your answer?
Well, maybe if you clarified a little bit more what you were looking for. Is what you're really asking, how do we prove there is no God?
This is not a loaded question. It's simple. How is being an atheist right? That's
okay. What do you mean by right?
Well, since you don't have the answer to that, let's move
No,
on.
No, Darryl. This isn't about not having the answer.
What do you mean by
Do you
right?
want the answer? I'm asking you what you mean by right.
Yes. How is that good for society? Like, if you ask a Christian, if you ask a Christian how being a Christian is good for them, they may go into things like, okay, it affected my morality here. It stopped me from doing this here. You know what I mean?
Yes, because Darryl,
life.
because Christianity is a packaged worldview that includes a lot of things, and atheism is just, I don't believe there's a God.
Okay.
So the things that inform my morality and my position in society and what I do, that is not founded on the fact that I don't believe in God. It is, in my case, secular humanism.
Okay. On the lines of morality, what is your take on bestiality?
What is my take on why is my take on I don't know why my take on bestiality is relevant, but apart from disease issues and the fact that I don't know how you can get consent, informed, enthusiastic consent from an animal. If you could get informed, enthusiastic consent from an animal, I'd have a hard time finding out what the objection is. But you can't.
Oh, okay, so
But you can't get informed, enthusiastic consent from an animal. By the way, we're animals. But since
saying that,
you're not an animal?
Are you a vegetable?
I mean, saying that's what you saying. But go ahead.
Well, that's why we asked you. Do you not think you're an animal?
No. You didn't. You made a statement. You said that we're all animals. I don't want to jump around. Let's just answer this question.
All right.
Your take on bestiality, is that the same for your friend over there?
What's your take on bestiality?
Yeah, I would go along with what Matt said. What is your take on bestiality?
Well, I'm not here to answer the questions. I'm just asking y'all the questions.
You don't want to have a conversation here. You just want to.
Well, I'm sorry. You're right. In fairness, yeah, you're right. I thought it would be self-explanatory because I said that I was a pre-Constantine Christian. So, they believe in the laws, statutes, and commandments. So, we stand in a place where bestiality is immoral.
Okay.
According to our laws.
Yeah, I have loads of objections to bestiality, primarily along the lines of disease issues and perhaps even its potential issues on psychology, that people who might be engaged in this sort of thing may have other issues that deserve treatment. But when it comes to, and the fact that you can't get informed, enthusiastic consent from an animal. So on those grounds, I'm opposed to bestiality. And I'd like to point out that those grounds are actually rooted in the facts about reality and not what some old book said.
Okay. Well, I just asked because I've questioned other atheists, and one atheist said if it was okay with the laws of the land, he had no problem with it.
Yeah,
so
I don't. Darryl?
Yeah, I understand that.
My position on what is or isn't moral is completely separate from what the laws of the land are. I think the laws of our land are grossly immoral in many areas.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you said that. But I'm just saying what another atheist said.
Yeah.
And that was my point, that you atheists need to become more uniform.
No. Didn't you hear earlier? Didn't you hear earlier when Matt said all atheism means is this: you don't believe in a God? Why would you expect that to be uniform?
I would agree with you that if there is in fact a right position, everybody should hold it, atheist or not. I'm only objecting because what you're doing of suggesting that atheism should have one single position on the morality of, let's say, bestiality or whatever, has nothing to do with atheism. Your position on a moral issue has to do with what the foundation of your morals are. In my case, secular humanism. I would like it if every secular humanist agreed, but the nice thing is that we are not perfect thinkers, and so we engage in arguments and disagreement to find better ways to live.
We're not perfect thinkers. Okay.
I'm not aware of any.
All right.
Do you know a perfect thinker?
All right.
Not
Well,
all atheists are
like I
secular
said-
humanists, so.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to deal with that. Can I ask you another question? When it's on the same lines of morality, when it comes to homosexuality, what is the atheist stand?
There is no atheist
stand on anything.
The atheist stand only applies to God, whether or not you believe in a God. If you believe in a God, you're a theist. If you don't, you're an atheist. There is no atheist position on anything else. The only thing that we can tell you is what our positions are and why.
Yeah, we can tell you what we think, but we can't give you the atheist position.
Atheism is not like a religion alternative.
Yeah, y'all not uniform. It is a religion. But,
No,
y'all not
atheism is
uniform.
not a religion.
Okay, well, that's what you saying, but I could prove that it's a religion.
Okay, prove it. Prove it.
Prove that it's a religion?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Let's take our time with it. Okay, so y'all seem to be a little hot and bothered here. Let's calm down.
Darryl.
Let's calm down, and I'll ask you the question. I'll prove it.
Darryl.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Here's the thing. If I were to tell you what Christianity is and isn't, how would you react?
I'm not a Christian.
A pre-Constantine Christian, I think you said, right?
That's a totally, because Christianity
No, it's not.
today is
No, it's not.
It's paganism.
No,
it's paganism.
No, pre-Constantine Christianity isn't even a thing, Darryl. It's not a real thing.
Well, that's what you say.
Okay.
But I can prove
Aren't you getting a little hot and bothered?
The thing is, if you call in to tell us what atheism is, you're going to look ridiculous. Why don't you listen to us tell you? Why don't you listen to us tell you what atheism is?
Sir, I asked that question and you had no answer. So
that is a damn lie, Darryl.
I told you that it was a religion.
Darryl, that's a damn lie.
It was a religion.
Your ass is on hold. That's a damn lie. You didn't ask us what atheism was, and we didn't have an answer. You asked us whether or not atheism was right, and I started with an explanation of what atheism was, and you interrupted. I've tried to solve this problem at the outset by giving a clear definition so that we could have a conversation, and you interrupted that, and then you tap danced around and you came up with your BS bestiality thing as if that has any relevance to any of this. And we've repeatedly pointed out that atheism is a single position on this, and now you are trying to lecture us on what atheism is. Do you not see how absurd you look?
I only try to give the lecture, sir, because you asked me a question regarding how do I know that atheism is a religion?
Yes.
So I was trying to answer that question.
Well, you
That's
were
the only
also
reason why I
lying.
went into that.
You were also lying about what you had previously asked and whether or not I had an answer.
Well, I'm sorry, sir, but the answer that you gave was kind of,
beyond your comprehension?
No, it was kind of vague. You really didn't answer it. Like you say, I tap danced around, but you tap danced around your answer, and then it was kind of like,
What's
a
vague about
contradiction in your
atheists
answer.
don't believe in a God? What's vague about that?
Well, I mean, you are being used as a arm of Satanism.
Okay,
Are you familiar with
Darryl? That's a brilliant argument that is completely irrelevant. You just keep asserting things about us. How do you know we're being used as an arm of Satanism?
Are you familiar with Albert Pike?
No.
No.
I may be, but
well,
the name's not ringing a bell.
All right, it's a Jewish man named Albert Pike.
Yeah, what the hell does that
has
have to
a
do
statue.
with atheists being used as pawns of Satan? How do you demonstrate that?
If you let me answer the question, I will without cutting the man off.
I'll cut you off permanently if you don't actually get to the point.
Albert Pike wrote a book called Morals and Dogma, and in the book he predicted the 3 world wars. And in the 3rd World War, he said that we shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists.
Call me back after the 3rd World War.
I was still wondering what his proof was for atheism being a religion.
Yeah, he's found his little prophetic dude, and so when we get to the 3rd World War, he can call back and explain how that demonstrates this. that we are the pawns of Satan. Let's see who's been waiting here for a while. Drake in New Orleans, thanks for waiting.
Hey, Drake.
Yeah. Hi. I've been watching out for like 10 years.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I'm an atheist. Well, I was just wanted to bring a point up. Are you familiar with the Bible verse Matthew 7:13?
Yeah.
Where the road to heaven,
The wide gate and the narrow gate.
Right.
Yep.
And it says the road to heaven is a. Yeah, that's what you said. All right. Well, and I want to say, I think that can be interpreted as saying most people go to hell and only a few people go to heaven. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, possibly meaning that.
Well, not only could you interpret it that way, but I think that's the primary doctrine of most versions of Christianity. The verse is about, the easy pathway, the de facto pathway is going to lead you straight to hell, and the difficult path, essentially saying it's difficult to attain your salvation, which is in conflict with the idea that salvation is a gift. But the idea that most people are going to hell, that's something I was taught from the time I was 5.
That's crazy.
Why?
Because God's supposed to be all powerful, and that would make him wrong.
God is. There's nothing in conflict there between God being all powerful. He's powerful enough to send people to hell.
I mean, you wouldn't think it makes him wrong?
Oh, I think it makes him a moral thug. I think the God of both the Old Testament and the New Testament is one of the most immoral beings that you could possibly come up with. But how many people go to heaven or hell? I mean, it's not like this was remotely a surprise.
Yeah.
See, what ended up happening is that people who saw this and got irritated and viewed it as immoral came up with these notions where God saves everybody, or nobody goes to hell, they just get annihilated. And they'll search around for biblical passages that support their preferred doctrine of what an afterlife is. But that's not, it may or may not be biblical. But my concern is not whether or not what the Bible says, but I'm gonna let you go, Drake, because whatever's going on with your mic is lots of static
Noisy.
and stuff. Yeah. I thought my mic was bad. The idea of heaven and hell may in fact be immoral on its face. The idea that more people are likely to go to hell under most versions of Christianity, it's just the way it is.
We all deserve it, right?
Yeah, we were born sinners, and some people don't find their way clear, or God doesn't grant them the salvation by faith through grace. It's the sort of thing, and I'm not just dismissing your point as if, this will have no impact on anybody. There are plenty of Christians who have no idea what they believe or why. They call into the show every week. But to tell them that most people are going to hell, they've already accepted that, most of them. That they are the special ones, they are the chosen ones, they are the elite, they are the ones who, through nothing that they've done and deserving of their own actions, they're the ones who God has preferred to be saved. And it's worthwhile to point out that that system is fundamentally immoral. That John could live his entire life as a good human being who donates to charity, who builds ramps and makes hats and gives them out to the homeless, and lives on just his bare essentials and donates to the Against Malaria Foundation and does all this and never killed anybody or hurt anybody or anything like that. But because he doesn't believe or isn't chosen of God or doesn't repent, that he should go to hell. Meanwhile, there are people who are awful, just terrible human beings who live to exploit others, who tell people that they're wrong and they're bad and they're evil by who they are and who they were born as, who make stuff up and lie and abuse people and take their money, and they've done nothing. They're called clergy quite often. Done nothing to actually help this world. They are essentially parasitic leeches in many cases. While they many of them are wonderful people who try to do their best for others, there's a whole segment of the clergy that are simply leeches. They don't produce anything, they don't provide anything. They're in this cyclical tap dance of genuflecting and sanctity, and yet somehow they could kill people and still find their way through to a good afterlife. That to me seems fundamentally immoral. If your afterlife isn't based on what you actually do, what you actually think, I don't know how that could possibly be viewed as a good system. And then they have the nerve to say to atheists, oh, well, if there's no God, anything goes. What is it that's keeping you from killing people? Really? I have no desire to kill people. Do you? I mean, if you do, by all means, keep believing whatever it is that's stopping you from killing people. But I don't think that this is a real fear. I don't think that they actually believe that we don't have a good reason to not kill people. They're just afraid to recognize that our reason for not killing people is vastly superior to their reason. I didn't need anybody to write down, thou shalt not kill. All I needed to do was recognize that I share space with other people, and that if everybody took the action I was going to take, we'd end up with a world where it was seemingly okay to kill people. And that puts me at risk. You can come up with a good moral system that is founded on nothing but your own selfishness if you are willing to look at the impact of your actions and see that you have to share space with other people. Like this myopic sense of, oh, it's in my best interest to kill John right now. No, it's not. You're too short-sighted to see the broader picture.
Well, and even if you don't sit down and think about it, we're biologically wired to be altruistic. So it's even if you're the kind of person who doesn't think about that stuff and benefit to society and well-being of others, at some level you're intrinsically wired to care about that anyway, just by the way we've evolved.
I think it's something that everybody kind of comes to a recognition of earlier. By the way, children aren't born with a sense of moral responsibility or anything. They're taught this. I mean, they'll fight like cats and dogs, and it's my toy and everything else. You have to teach them the benefits of sharing. And as soon as they are able to comprehend the benefits of sharing, all of a sudden sharing becomes the moral thing to do. All of a sudden they begin to understand how they're sharing space with others. Joshua in Dayton, thanks so much for waiting.
Hey, Matt and John, I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, Joshua. Welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be on. So I'm a member of the Clergy Project. I'm on the communications committee. I have a very interesting story. So my mom was good friends with Ken Hand Vance from Genesis, helped host them. I was trained by Kirk Comfort and Ray Cameron in their Way of the Master program.
I think you mean Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going through their program. I was kind of, pretty messed up as a kid, but thanks to Dr. Bart Ehrman, I found my way out. But the interesting thing that I'm kind of dealing with now is that my father, who is conservative Christian, I would call him a presuppositionalist, he doesn't believe that I'm actually a non-believer anymore.
Of course not.
Some conversations that we've had, or I've kind of heard through my older brother, who's no longer part of the faith either. He's that Joshua, he knows the truth. He's just rebelling.
Yeah.
And so I haven't, quote unquote, come out of the closet to him on this. But I know that moment is going to be coming very soon, and I just don't really know how to bridge the topic with him, because as I saw in your debate with Cy Ten Bruggencate, Matt, there's just really no reasoning with someone who refuses to believe that there are people who just don't think that a God exists, and they're being intellectually honest. And I don't even know if maybe I should even try to bridge the topic myself, because my mom and his first wife somewhat suddenly passed away a couple of years ago, and he found a lot of solace in his faith through her passing, but that's one of the things that'll precipitate me losing my faith. So, I mean, given that this is a very close family member, and he's a presuppositionalist and not taking me seriously, I'm just not sure what way forward there's going to be.
Yeah, so this is pretty standard fare. If in fact he's a presuppositionalist, the idea is that everybody not only believes, they know that there's a God, and they're just in denial, or they've, God's given them over to a reprobate mind, and they're, you saw the debate with Cy. We see this all the time, and I'm afraid that I don't have perhaps really good advice for you on how to actually deal with this. But for me, if Cy was a family member, hang on, I need to take a shower. That's a scary proposition. But if Cy were in fact a family member and I wanted to have a conversation with him, if he just sat there and kept doing this, you're not an atheist, you're not an atheist, you're not an atheist, you believe, you know that God exists, then the conversation's over. And the conversation would end with, I cannot talk to you if all you're going to do is parrot what you are convinced of. And not, it shows that you don't give a rat's ass about me, that you don't give a rat's ass about the truth, you don't give a rat's ass about what my thoughts are on this subject. All you want to do is stay protected and shielded in your belief. And what you're really saying when you say that, I know that there's a God exists, is that you cannot possibly be wrong. And I'm acknowledging that I could be wrong. Now, I'm not going to change my mind just because somebody who thinks they can't be wrong is telling me how wrong I am. You have to actually demonstrate it. And if you're not willing to give a damn about me and acknowledge what I'm telling you, we're just not going to have these conversations.
Yeah, I like that. I like that point, kind of making it about who's willing to be intellectually honest and be open to changing their mind. But he and I do have a pretty good relationship. That's kind of an interesting thing. In the past, we just kind of skirted around this topic, but I feel the pressure kind of mounting, and that this is a conversation we are going to have. And he has a tendency to, quote scripture. He knows the New Testament like the back of his hand. And so I'm kind of thinking, okay, what's maybe the first thing that I could kind of bring up, or that I could kind of talk about to show, why I've changed my position, and I'm not just, hiding or kind of, trying to come up with reasons to sin, just want to sin. Or as I think where he's coming from is thinking that maybe I just want to, find reasons why, Christians can't be trusted. Because I shared an article from the New York Times about that 11-year-old girl who was raped by preachers and impregnated. I shared that, and I quoted something from the article which described, that these were conservative, Christian people. And he commented on the article it was basically implying that, oh, this isn't good reason not to believe in God, that Christians act this way. This isn't going to convince anybody.
It's not. It's the fact that there are believers who say and do terrible things is not a good reason to not believe in God. As a matter of fact, if he wanted to, he could dig into the Bible, into the New Testament, and talk about all the people who cry, Lord, Lord. But essentially, there are plenty of people who profess but aren't. And then he could make a claim, a specious claim, that these weren't true Christians. These people who do things like that, they're not true Christians. No true Christian would do that. And curiously, what that gets to is that no true Christian is ever or would ever do anything awful, truly awful.
Yeah.
I mean, they might, cheat a little here and there, but they would never do anything truly awful. And then, of course, this gets this notion of that there are different degrees of sin, which is in dispute, that any sin, any single sin, is the same. One sin is enough to damn you, and you were born tainted. I wouldn't look for, you may find passages, and you can have debates and discussions about passages in the New Testament. The reason, why don't you believe in God?
Oh, why don't I?
Yeah.
Well, I think it started with having a rigid belief in biblical inerrancy, and then finding that there was errors in the Bible, and then just seeing how through my mom's suffering as a result of stage 4 cancer, how it seemed as though the heavens were absolutely silent, and there were thousands of people who were praying. Nothing at all happened. And so I'm like, well, you pray or you don't pray, you get the same result. And so kind of combining the scholarship, biblical scholarship, with my own experience, I guess that's kind of brought me to the conclusion that there's just no good reason for me to believe that what I used to believe is actually true.
How literal is he with the Bible?
It's the Word of God, inerrant, inspired, perfect, and free of error.
Sure. You know what that means? That means that slavery used to be moral, and has never changed. But more importantly, it means that no two Christians have ever got together and prayed for world peace or an end to hunger Because the Bible expressly says that wherever two or more of you are gathered together in my name, whatever you ask for, I will grant.
So are you thinking that maybe I should just kind of walk with him, as it were, through the Bible and say, you believe the Bible is perfect. Let's see what the Bible actually says. Maybe there's some other passages that you hadn't considered before.
There's a problem in the sense that you can interpret those things in many different ways.
Right.
See, because while that verse says that, there are other verses that talk about everything going according to God's plan. And so if John and I were Christians and we got together and prayed for world peace, if world peace wasn't in God's plan, it's not going to happen, even though he promised it. So you can point to that potential conflict. That really the verse should say, wherever two or more of you are gathered together in my name, whatever you ask for, if I feel like doing it, I'll do. That's the only way to reconcile those passages. And that is, as you pointed out, thousands of people praying for things, and the results don't seem to have any, or the amount of people praying or what they're praying for doesn't seem to have any identifiable effect on the result. And yet people keep believing it. God found their car keys. He helped their sports team win. He helped them through that test in algebra that day. Doesn't heal amputees. Doesn't solve hunger.
I think it also depends on how much you want to engage with him about this. Like, if it was me, I mean, you're a former member of the clergy, but if it was me, Scripture doesn't mean anything to me at all. It has no authority, so I wouldn't bother arguing Scripture with anybody, because to me, it's not anything that you need to pay attention to. But you're in a different position, and I guess are you hoping that you might change his mind, or it's kind of a question of what your goal is. Just to have a conversation, give him some stuff to think about. Do you want to actually change his mind about things? It kind of depends on what your motivation is for wanting to have the engagement, I think.
My dad and I don't talk about religion at all.
Yeah.
We still get along. We do things together. They come down and visit. We love each other. I'll call him, I'll point out, hey, here's what I did on the truck, or this other thing. We find the areas that don't involve massive arguments, and we care enough about the relationship that we focus on those. He's never going to change his mind, and I'm not going to spend time trying to do it. I want to engage people who want to have the conversations. And so, that's why I was saying, if I had a presuppositionalist in my family who I cared about the relationship with, the conversations about religion would just not exist, probably.
Okay, that might be the most reasonable path forward. Then it's just kind of let that conversation be perpetually put off into the future.
Yep. All right, we are like 7 minutes left. I want to try and get to another call or two real quick, but thanks and good luck, Josh. We'll let us know how it goes.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks, Matt and John.
Well, we kind of addressed both of these real recently. Lee in Albany, thanks for waiting.
Hi, guys.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good. What's up?
Awesome. Well, I'm a first-time caller. First time getting on the show, and I wanted to talk to you guys. I know you kind of touched on the subject of hell when talking about morality in the previous calls.
Mm-hmm.
But I myself, I'm an atheist, and I go to a Catholic college, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's very different from how. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
That's okay.
It's very different from how it was in high school, where most of my friends in my town, surprisingly, are atheists, which I know isn't very common, but
sure.
It's what I was used to. So I went to college, and I went to this Catholic college, and I found myself having a lot of Catholic friends. And like I said, I'm an atheist, and I'm also transgender. So when it comes to talking with them about moral issues and my beliefs and their beliefs, the idea of hell comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Because they think that I'm going there. So
do they think that that's a good thing?
Yeah. And I like talking to them about it, and I like conversing with them. But one thing that I have trouble getting across to them, which I wanted your guys' advice about talking to them with, is that I mean, the basic idea of hell is, or the colloquial version of hell that most Christians and Catholics believe in, is that it's a place for bad people. So basically what I try to talk to them about is that if I'm going to hell, therefore I must be a bad person. And then I ask them if they think I'm a bad person because I'm an atheist or because I'm transgender. And every single time they say, well, no. And then the conversation basically stops.
Yeah. I understand why it stops, because at that point, I've just acknowledged that you're not a bad person, and I don't think you should go to hell, and I don't think it's a good idea that you will go to hell. And the very next question is, then how can you agree with a doctrine that says that I'm going to hell? How is it that you can be more moral than your God?
Right. And then I've talked to them a little bit. I've gotten into... I love watching the show, and I've used a lot of arguments that you guys have used about morality when it comes to hell and heaven, and especially, Matt, I know you talk about sometimes the idea that your mother goes to heaven, and if she knows that you're in hell suffering, but there's no suffering in heaven, would she be suffering knowing that you're suffering and all that?
You can do the same thing. Yeah, you can do the same thing with your friends. First of all, hey, if you found out today that I died and went to hell, would you be sad? And they're going to say yes. And then ask them, if there's no sadness in heaven, does that mean when you get to heaven you stop caring about me? Does that mean there's and would that still be you? Would there ever be a you that doesn't care about me?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying, because I mean, when I have raised the whole mother thing, the only the main response that I get is, well, I'm not a theologian and I've never been to heaven and I'm not a mother, so I don't know, like all that kind of stuff.
This I'm not a theologian, that is an admission of defeat.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is saying, I believe something, but I don't really understand it, and I'm not particularly comfortable with it, and I don't feel the need to be an expert in it. Even though, if this thing were true, it would be the single most important thing anybody could know or understand. Because all of the life that we know about becomes nothing if you're going to spend an eternity somewhere. That would have to be the most important thing. And there's the reasons why, churches, Catholic churches and others have declared, suicide to be a mortal sin. It's because they recognize that the doctrines they're teaching, the natural progression, if there was no prohibition for suicide, would be for people to kill themselves right now. I'm pretty sure I just walked out of the confessional. I'm right with God. Everything is going. Let me just off myself right now, because that's going to guarantee that I get there. So they have to put a prohibition in that suicide is going to send you straight to hell. Because if you kill yourself, you can't keep donating to the church.
Yeah, and I've talked to him about it. Going off a little bit, I went to my friend's baptism, and we kept making jokes where he should just walk out in the street now, because then he'll go to heaven. And then he's like, but suicide is a sin, and we're like, and I have one other atheist friend there, and we kind of just gave each other looks like, well, yeah, that's why.
Yeah, but you know what? If you love your kids...
Yeah, Andrea Yates, I was just thinking of that too.
Yeah.
Her kids didn't commit suicide, but she was convinced that she was doing what was in their best interest by killing them now.
What greater love could she have than to damn herself to hell to make sure her kids go to heaven?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the loophole from the Catholic Church about that, but since they've, been dodgy about their limbo and all kinds of things. But Catholics, it's just a big cult.
Yeah, basically. It's pretty weird going to a Catholic college, because we're Franciscan Catholic and we have friars walking around, and they're all nice guys and everything, but it's just a very culty feel.
Yeah, if I throw my Southern Baptist hat back on, then they're in a Marian saint worshiping cult that is completely not biblical. Which is what I would have. That's what I would have said as a Southern Baptist, and now as an atheist, I would say the same thing about many of the Southern Baptists. They might be on firmer ground biblically, but they still believe something which there's no good reason to believe.
Yeah.
So take that, Lee, and we're pretty much out of time, but I want to try and get to the one last call that's been sitting here for an hour or so, and call us back and let us know, how it goes, how things are going. Because you're never, it's unlikely that you're ever going to stop dealing with these things. I mean, even if you got rid of all your Catholic friends, you're still going to run into somebody somewhere. And you are in a particularly awful position because transgender people are under attack. And I would be encouraged, now I say a lot negative about religion. And I will talk trash about, clergy being parasites. There are also a lot of good people who are simply infected with a particular religious meme. They're doing what they think is right. They fully acknowledge that they don't necessarily understand it. And while you may run into difficulty with your Catholic friends talking about things like hell or what they think, the fact that they are talking to you and are willing to continue to talk to you is a good sign. It's not a sign that you're necessarily going to talk them out of their religion today or tomorrow or any other day. But it puts those friends in a category that is completely separate from Westboro Baptist Church, from the people who are slaughtering atheist bloggers around the world, from the people, the fundamental Islamic extremists who are wanting to kill anybody who doesn't agree with their doctrine, the people who are bombing abortion clinics, the relatives, the family members who kick out their atheist, gay, transgender kids and want nothing more to do with them. So listen charitably. Always be grateful that you actually have friends that for whatever reason, they should despise you based on what they claim to believe or despise who you are, not necessarily you. And they don't. And that is an optimistic sign in a world where religion and religiosity is in decline. Those are the people that you got to keep having conversations with.
Yeah. I mean, thank you so much, guys. Obviously, I'm going to, I appreciate you guys talking to me and taking my call. I'm going to let you go because I know you said you wanted to take another call, but thank you so much. Have a nice day, guys.
Thanks, Lee.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do one more call and we'll try to get through it really quick. I just want to remind everybody after the show's over, we go to Star of India, 2900 West Anderson Lane. Michael in Ontario, thanks for waiting.
Hey, Michael, you still there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Oh, we thought you fell asleep.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
We are technically past the end of the show, but you waited so patiently. I wanted to try and get to your comment. So go ahead.
You're right. Okay. My question was similar to that, but you guys answered it quite nicely. So I'm going to ask a separate question. It's going to be quick.
Okay.
Okay. So I was going to debate my mother regarding to like the immorality of the Bible and whatnot. So I got the Old Testament down, but how do I go about the New Testament?
Go about the New Testament for what?
The immorality aspect of it, because I heard early in the show you talked about how it's also immoral in the New Testament.
Sure.
I was wondering points. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the easy nutshell. First of all, the Bible in the Old Testament condones slavery and gives explicit instructions about it. The New Testament doesn't ever change or correct that. Jesus actually should have said, hey, that thing about slavery, you all got that wrong, here's the correction. That correction doesn't exist. In fact, the only thing that Jesus does say is, slaves, obey your masters.
Okay.
The other thing is that the Old Testament is really the Jewish Bible. And the Jewish notion of the afterlife isn't well formed because the Old Testament and Jewish Bible don't talk about it very much. When you die, you slept with your fathers. There may be this idea that death was in fact the end. But the New Testament comes along and says that no, in fact, death is not the end. We are going to torture you forever or annihilate those people and have some good afterlife for somebody else. And what is how do they go about making sense of this? By God taking human form and sacrificing himself to satisfy his bloodlust and serve as a loophole for rules that if you were God, you'd think you could just forgive people, that you wouldn't need to kill yourself in a bloody mess. And this harkens back to the Old Testament thing of when you had to slaughter animals and God loved it. Now, granted, I like a good barbecue, but I'm not going to say that that's what you need to do for me to forgive you for not loving me enough. And the entirety of the New Testament compounds the mistakes of the Old Testament. It's not like Bible 2.0 where we've fixed the bugs. Instead, we've tried to claim the bugs are features and added more bugs. Now, you can go through, I would caution you, don't fall into the trap of looking for lists of Bible contradictions.
Okay.
Just go through, there's some good lists at infidels.org on the absurdities and immoral passages. Skeptics Annotated Bible is another one where they'll have little icons, sorting things. But I talk about slavery all the time, because there is no answer to that. And it is something that is people intuitively recognize as immoral. And they have to. If the Bible is the Word of God, they have to come up with something for that. They have to be able to say, oh, here's my justification.
It was different then.
But the thing is, they're offering you their justification, not God's justification, not the Bible's justification. There's no clarification.
Okay, yeah, that's good, yeah.
Ray Comfort, when he was on the show, and I tried to press him on slavery, his response was he doesn't believe everything in the Bible. And if you find somebody who's willing to go down that route, the very next question is, how do you tell what you should believe and what you shouldn't believe? And if there is a God, and God, as it says, I think in Timothy, is not the author of confusion, why is this shit so confusing? Why can't God say, here are my 10 commandments. Thou shalt not own another human being as property. Thou shalt make every effort to treat everyone equally, regardless of gender, regardless of the racial construct that you're going to put on things. Where are those?
Right.
That's about all we got time for, Michael. I appreciate it. Hopefully that's helpful.
All right, thank you.
Thanks to everybody who showed up and is on the other side of the glass, and for those of you watching at home, and all the folks on the other side of the studio who make this a reality. I'll be gone next week. Thanks, John. We'll see you later.
Take care.
This is Russell Glasser, host of The Atheist Experience. You know, The Atheist Experience is made possible by volunteers and the generous support of viewers like you. If the promotion of positive atheist culture and separation of church and state are values that you hold, please consider contributing by becoming an ACA member or visiting our product page at evolvefish.com under the Partner tab. Thank you.